Hello, fellow Toastmasters and guests. Welcome to the meeting of online presenters of Virtual Toastmasters Club. Our mission, we empower individuals to become more effective communicators and leaders. I'm Sergeant in Arms, Dr. Sunny. To our guests, a warm welcome. We're thrilled by your presence and your interest in our club. Please note, if you're interested in joining online presenters, you should be a current or former active member of Toastmasters International and have completed at least 6 Toastmasters official speeches. However, if you have substantial, relevant presentation experience, we welcome you to apply for membership after demonstrating your abilities in a 2 to 3 minute speech. It can be delivered during one of our club meetings. All requests for membership are subject to approval. We have members and guests from many countries throughout the world. As a professional organization, we ask that you please be aware of language or word usage that may be considered offensive or otherwise insensitive due to cultural differences. Please note, we are recording this meeting. Your video and audio contribution just may be used for club marketing purposes or promotion or educational. Remember, please mute your microphone when you're not speaking. And now, please help me welcome to the virtual stage our club president, Joni Laidlaw. Welcome, Joni.
Thank you, Sunny, for that warm welcome on a very cold winter's day. We're small today in numbers. I'm gonna assume it's because, well, it's that time of the year when you're not sure what the day is. Everybody's cold, everybody's tired, and everybody just wants to curl up, get some rest because or something of that nature is occurring. But you know what? We still showed up. We're still here, and we are going to have an amazing meeting. Leading us through our meeting today is a lady who has ran 6 marathons. And as it was said in the chat, I am tired just thinking about the concept of running 6 marathons. But you know what? It is the start of the Greco-Roman calendar 2026 year. And as such, you never know what the resolutions are going to be. And who better to motivate than someone who is already motivated? So please help me make her feel energized with our assortment of running accomplishment, Sherry Flick.
Thank you so much. And Joni, I have to say, you are starting rumors. I have not run 6 marathons, but as I mentioned, it's called a 6-star major, which I'm trying to accomplish. But thank you so much for having that confidence in me that I can do it. I've run 5 marathons. So I'm only 1 short, so you were pretty close. But thank you so much. Good evening, fellow Toastmasters. Happy New Year! So welcome to today's meeting of online presenters. Our theme for this evening or for the new year is online voices, new year choices. So even when we meet online, our voices matter. Sometimes we think that online meetings don't have the same significance, but it does. So how we speak, listen, and respond all makes a difference. Every interaction involves choices, how clearly we express ideas, and how attentively we listen and how thoughtfully we support one another, as Sunny mentioned earlier. So a new year doesn't require big resolutions or even goals. Instead, it's about small intentional choices. So choosing clarity over rushing, choosing preparation over habit, and choosing encouragement over criticism. We have to also choose to listen with purpose. So these choices don't just apply here in Toastmasters, they carry over into work, home, and everyday life. Our words and actions will shape relationships and build trust. So for today's meeting, We will feature an assortment of opportunities to practice these choices. We'll have prepared speeches, impromptu table topics, and evaluations. So I just encourage everyone to think about the messages being sent with their voices and presence as they are projecting. So to start, we're going to have Graham Cans. He will share the tip of the day, but in just offering insight into something, whether it's technical or, you know, just a great topic. But before he gives that tip of the day, I would like for every role player to just briefly tell everyone what their role entails. So we will start with our timer, Jim Barber.
Thank you, Madam Toastmaster. As the timer, I will be timing everybody. This is kind of rocket science, but I would like to take this opportunity to find out for sure what I'm going to be timing everybody at. Kai, 5 to 7? That's a yes?
Yes.
Okay, alrighty. And let's see, me as the evaluator, 2 to 3, table topics were, Graham, you said your tip was going to run long?
Yeah,
How-
5 to 7 if you would.
Okay, you got it. Okay, that's what I'm going to be doing, Madam Toastmaster. Oh, I'm going to be trying to turn on the times at, let's see if I can find it right off, something resembling green, yellow, and red, if I can manage to do that while I'm doing everything else. That's it.
Thank you so much for that. And I love your very creative color scheme there. Thank you so much. Next, our odd counter will be Graham Cans as well. So, Graham, can you just tell us? Oh, nope, nope, nope. Yes, I see that we have a different odd counter, and that will be Marianne Grady. So, Marianne, tell us what your role is as odd counter, and you can do watcher as well.
As the counter, I will be listening, and that's a skill as Toastmasters that we all need to develop. But I'll be listening for crutch words, ahs, ums, when double clutches. So I'm paying attention and will report on that at the end. I will also be looking at your visual presence in the meeting and giving a report on that as well.
Thank you so much. And as we go along, if I get something wrong, as Marianne did, she gestured and told me she was in that role. So we have to help each other out this evening. Our grammarian and word of the day, which we talked about, but our grammarian is Andrew Byrne. Andrew, can you tell us what your role entails?
I am the grammarian today. The word of the day is assortment. Many of you during the holidays received an assortment of candies in a box, known as a box of candy. And they had different candies within the box. That's known as an assortment. I look forward to listening to everybody use that word of the day, as well as correct grammar in their sentence structure and how they express themselves. I'll give a report when called upon during our evaluation section of our meeting.
Thank you so much, Andy. Next, we have our chat monitor and our vote counter, and that will be led by Joni Laidlaw. Joni.
Thank you, Sherry. As the chat monitor, I will be monitoring the chat for any conversation, anything you might have missed or our speaker might miss. That way we can point it out. Sometimes it's hard to multitask when you're on the platform. I'll also be the vote counter today. Fortunately, we'll only be voting on table topics, and I will do that by dropping a link to the handy dandy website in our chat. Get it? The chatty vote counter, and hopefully everyone votes for best table topic speaker, and I'll give a report when called upon to do so. Back to you, Sherry.
Thank you so much. And I think I'm just going to throw it back at you. You are our table topics master, correct? So can you tell us what you'll be doing for that?
whenever somebody asks you a question, sometimes you just freeze and you really can't think of an answer. Well, this is a good way to practice impromptu speaking, because I will be just throwing random questions out at people so that they get the opportunity to think on their feet, warm up that brain, which is probably freezing at this time, to get it going. That's what the table topic master does. Back to you, Sherry.
Thank you so much. The one thing I noticed that we never talk about is during this time is the general evaluator in that role. But I will just mention that it would be Graham Cans. So he will go over that role when he takes that on. But for right now, I'm going to turn it over to Graham because he is our tip master. And I'm looking forward to hearing his tip because it's going to be almost like a full speech, 5 to 7 minutes. Go right ahead, Graham.
Thank you, Toastmaster Sherry. Actually, today I'm going to be doing something a little interactive because I'd, in fact, like perhaps this recording to be used to show other Toastmasters clubs what they can do to improve their online presentation skills. So I'm going to share the official Toastmasters International online meeting tips. You can all see those, I'm assuming, the before the meeting and during the meeting and speakers and etc. I'm going to run through the official Toastmasters tips, and then I'm going to be asking you for your contributions to things that we can add to these. The Toastmasters official tips suggest that you should have the link to the official meeting before the meeting. That's a really good idea. Try to get access to a camera and some headphones. External speakers sometimes get picked up on microphones and can cause echoing. So try to have a camera and a separate microphone. If you're performing a meeting role or you're going to be a speaker, join the meeting a few minutes early so that you can test your technology. And some online meetings like Zoom allow you to create a free account and customize it. Do that before the meeting starts. I want to talk about item 3 in there. If you're performing a meeting role or you're going to be a speaker, join the meeting a few minutes early so you can test your technology. One of the things that this club does is we have a 30-minute pre-meeting meeting where we all get together the same way that a face-to-face club would meet in the meeting room and start to chat and say hello to everybody. Has anybody here had an experience where they've only arrived at an online meeting right at the time that you're due to begin and your technology has not worked? Who's had that experience? Yep, I see a hand going up from Andrew and also from Jim. I think all of us have done that. So where you are going to an online meeting, whether it's a Toastmasters meeting or a Zoom meeting for work, my suggestion is, if at all possible, get there early so that you can test your tech, because there is nothing more embarrassing than the technology not working. During the meeting, it is important to mute yourself while the speakers are giving their speeches, because if you're not muted, Zoom in particular will pick up what you are doing and make you the featured speaker, which is probably not what you're intending to do, particularly if the noise that you're making is not a noise that you intended. I have seen some embarrassing situations where people have coughed or sneezed or had other bodily noises that were sufficiently loud that it has taken control of the camera from the speaker to them. And this is not something that you want to have happen. There's a suggestion that Toastmasters makes, and that is allowing you to message people directly to provide feedback for a speaker. My observation would be that's a really good idea, but not doing that while they are speaking. One of the things that this club does, for example, is has a chat monitor, somebody whose role is to watch the chat and alert the Toastmaster, for example, if there is something that the Toastmaster needs to know about. But something else that I have noticed that this club does and some other clubs do is people will be chatting and contributing while the speaker is speaking. I'm not going to ask for your opinion on this, but I would like you to think about, is that the equivalent of whispering to your neighbor while somebody is speaking in a face-to-face meeting? Is it potentially distracting? That's a question that you might like to ask yourself. Is there a better option to chat just during the bits between the speakers' roles? Or do you like the fact that there can be a contribution that adds to the presentation. I'm not going to ask for your point of view on that, but I would ask you to think about that. But here's one that I really like. If you're going to participate in table topics, make sure that your video is on so that the topics master can see when you are volunteering. Again, this club, we don't volunteer for table topics. We expect, being an advanced club, we expect all members and guests, if they've been warned beforehand, to respond to table topics because they are Toastmasters. But in some clubs, you have people who volunteer for a table topic role. If that's the case, I would suggest the raise hand function in Zoom, or at the very least to hold your hand up so that you can be seen. It would be a way of doing it. Anyone got any contributions they want to add there? Do you like volunteering for table topics, or do you like that you are going to get called on whether you know about it or not? And comme si, comme ça seems to be the response. One thing I will say about table topics, in a face-to-face club, we are nearly always encouraged to deliver the topic first, then call on the speaker so that everybody has to have a chance to think about it. But in an online meeting, it may be useful to alert the participant that you are going to be calling upon them so that they can look for their microphone and make sure that they are ready to respond immediately, rather than having that, I'm sorry, you're muted. Graham, you're still muted. We can't hear you. Graham, so it may be worthwhile in an online Toastmasters meeting reversing the role and allowing the participant to know that you are going to be calling on them so that they can prepare. Speakers should prepare speaking without a physical audience a few times before giving their speech. Change to gallery view, which will allow you to see the facial expressions of the audience. If you're sharing a presentation, make sure only to share the window that the presentation is in to prevent other distractions. Now, I'm in fact not doing that, which means that if I were to get any feedback coming in from Facebook, that would appear on my screen. But quite frankly, it's because I wanted to show you the official Toastmasters document. Make eye contact with the camera rather than your screen so that you actually look like you're talking to the audience members. And a way that you can do that, if you've got notes, for example, is to only use notes in the very top part of your screen so that you're nearly always looking at the camera. Because when you're looking in an audience, that's the way that you do it. The R role and the grammarian role should remain largely unchanged. The word of the day, we put it in the agenda. I would suggest that other clubs might like to do the same if they don't. But we have an extra role in this club that I really like, and that is you've got an R counter and you've got a grammarian, but you've also got a watcher. And that's, if you like, a visual grammarian's role. So you might like to consider that. I noticed that the timekeeper in this presentation is using a bright yellow light. Now, you may not be seeing that because you may only be seeing the big screen, but I can see that there is a light over there. The timer is essential for an online meeting. If you run hybrid meetings, I would suggest trying to get the timer to be an online role rather than an in-room role, because it's easier to see that. A PowerPoint presentation can be created with a green, yellow, and red slide, which is what we're doing here today. So make sure that your timer can be seen. The Toastmaster of the Day role doesn't change much, but what is really important is that the Toastmaster of the Day really does need to check with their speakers if they are going to be using technology, and if so, how to do it. Display the agenda on screen if you can, or in our case, we put it up into the chat. All of these things are suggestions from Toastmasters and from Toastmasters International, and I would agree with them. But the thing that I would say, not just for this club, but for all clubs, is be prepared to change those things if your particular club culture is different. For example, the suggestion that everybody should leave their cameras on is great to give feedback, but if you're in an area where bandwidth is an issue, the more video, the slower it will, the harder it will be for somebody to participate. The suggestion to turn off the microphone is important, but if you're giving a speech where there is a lot of laughter, can you tell that the audience is laughing if you can't hear them? Those are things that you need to consider. This is not a tip of the day that I'm going to tell you this is how you should do it, but I would like us all to think about it. Toastmaster Sherry.
You're
Your
muted.
microphone's still. Sherry, your mic.
Thank you so much. Did you mention that in your tip about unmuting yourself? Because we do that so often, and I know I do that very often. I try to be courteous by muting myself, but then when it's time for me to speak, I forget that I muted myself. Sorry about that, guys. I was going on and on and on. Okay, so let's move on. And now we're getting to one of the important parts of the meeting, right? Is to deliver speeches, it's to improve and get better. So we have one of our newer members, Kai, who is going to, Kai, is it Siang Lee? Did I pronounce that right?
Yes.
Okay,
Hi.
so he's great. So he's going to be delivering his second speech. So Kai joined Online Presenters in October of 2025, and he is working on the Innovative Planning Path Level 1. Kai is passionate about wellness through CrossFit and nutrition. He also enjoys reading and trekking in nature. Under evaluation and feedback, he will present his speech called Meeting Your Nemesis Joy. Let's welcome Kai. The floor is all yours.
Evening, fellow Toastmasters. Happy 2026. A couple of days ago, I reflected on my 2025. I believe many of you did as well. Graham, Sherry, Jim. Did you do that? Probably so. For me, I was thinking about the usual milestones, achievements, and frankly speaking, I was actually in a dark zone, a rather dark zone. Well, because 2025 was a different year for me. I didn't have a full-time job, no promotion, no increment, no fancy titles. I was on a career break. So when I was thinking through what did I achieve, I was kind of stumped. And in fact, I didn't know where I landed. Did I even waste a year? So I was in this cloud of a short while, cloud of negativity. And in that period of despondency, I decided, okay, I need to step out of it. I need to get out of this. Let me be creative and funny. That is when I took out a paintbrush, a figurative paintbrush, and I started painting the bullseye around where I landed. So I ditched the tangibles and I focused more on the intangibles, the assortments of values, and I narrowed it down to 3 values that really resonated with me, my core values: radiance, learning, and compassion. And I evaluated my year based on whether I actually live a life that resonated with my values. So radiance may seem like a funny value. I'm not too sure if it seems like so for when you hear this value. But when I told my friends about this value, they always laugh at me and they say, radiance? What a strange value. Well, radiance to me is not just about physical beauty, but it's about the energy that I bring to people around me. It's that positive ions that I have and that I share. So for me, when it comes to radiance, it boils down to the 3 fundamentals: exercise, diet, and sleep. That's how I generate radiance. And so I evaluated, okay, 2025. I was actually rather disciplined when it comes to adhering to good sleep, healthy diet, and regular exercise. So to me, that was a win. And then, compassion. When we talk about compassion, the first thing that comes to mind is empathy for others. And so then I was thinking, okay, what did I do? How did I contribute to the happiness of others? And I was thinking, okay, yes, I did some volunteer work for 1 whole year, this and that. But then the more important part, really, for me, as I was thinking about it, it is also about self-compassion. They are different sides of the same coin. And it is only when I'm gentle with myself, and it is only when I am well that I can really take very good care of the people that I love. And that's where I thought perhaps in 2025 I did a great job, because I was much more gentler with myself, and at the same time I was fierce in terms of drawing boundaries, and that's fierce self-compassion. And for me, that is a win, because despite drawing the fierce boundaries, I didn't feel guilty, and that's great. And so finally, learning. This is one of my core values. And when it comes to learning, I see it as recreation. By learning, we recreate, we become able to do things that we previously couldn't, and that I also learn to perceive the environment and the world in a different lens. Well, I thought through, yes, I had new adventures every quarter for 2025, from improv to gardening to meditation and even Toastmasters. And beyond that, I really learned to be comfortable with myself and to live a life that resonates with my values. So, I was thinking, as I was reflecting, I was thinking through all these different thoughts, and I was journaling down all these different ideas. I felt better, because it seemed like 2025 wasn't futile after all. My bullseye was actually my values. And in a way, I actually learned to be more comfortable with myself, and I measured my success based on what matters most to me, and not based on what society or what others think are important. So, at the start of 2026, I would like to ask all of you, what's your bullseye and how are you going to achieve it? Back to you, Toastmaster of the Day.
Thank you so much for that speech. I absolutely enjoyed it. Okay, so we're going to move on, and we're going to move on to our table topic session, and that's going to be led by Joni Laidlaw. Joni.
Thank you, Sherry, Madam Toastmaster of the Day. Now, table topics, as we stated before, is the time for an assortment of impromptu speeches. And today we'll be having a lot of impromptu speeches. Now, usually it's for persons who don't have a role on the agenda, but we all have a role on the agenda, so everybody is fair game. And as Graham said earlier, because of the format that we're in, it's going to be ask question, then call on person, which is my preferred format. So we're starting off with, what was the single best thing that happened to you in the past year and why? And this one is for Marianne Grady.
Well, thank you, Madam Topics Master. The single best thing, and I mentioned it earlier, was that I did get involved in the prison ministry in the county here. For 3 years since I've moved to Florida, I've been looking for something meaningful to do for volunteer work, and I've tried a lot of things. From they painted bowls, they do beading, they do the food pantry. Nothing really spoke to my soul when I tried it out. So then, I had a heart attack and couldn't do anything for a period of time. But as I started gaining mobility back, I was kind of like, I went to church one day and the one of my fellow parishioners was talking about this ministry. And when he was talking, I knew he was talking to me. And so I wanted to get more information so I understood it more clearly. But I did it. I thought I would be uncomfortable. These are criminals, these are people who are in jail. And I did not think I'd feel super comfortable with it. But when I went in, everybody was so nice. And I feel like they benefit so much from when we visit. So to me, being able to help others in some way is very important. And this was my number one choice for 2025. Back to you, Topics Master.
It's always important that we help others, because in helping others, we actually help ourselves. And great lesson to learn that we're all just humans having a human experience. The next question: describe your past year in one word and explain why you chose that word. And that is for Graham Carnes.
Toastmaster Joni, if I had to describe 2025 in a single word, it would be over. What more can I say? No, seriously, 2025 is over, and yet it is not. We are the sum of all of our experiences. There is no, that's done, this is new, because whether we like it or not, the point that we are at now is the result of all of the points that have led us to now. So 2025 for me had its high notes, it had its low notes. We managed to travel to multiple countries, which I thought was really nice. We recently were, for example, in Singapore. Didn't get a chance to catch up with Kai, unfortunately, because it was raining and we were going to temples and all sorts of stuff, but we still had a good time. I managed to cruise across the Pacific. I managed to cruise down through the Timor Sea. Didn't get to do the Atlantic, although we will get a chance to do that, we hope, again, maybe next year, perhaps the year after. But the thing I would say about 2025 is that for good or ill, whatever happened in 2025 has brought us to this point in 2026. And so the one word that I would use to describe 2025 is over, but the other word that I would use is launchpad, because it brings us to here and takes us forward. Topics Master Journey.
Thank you, Graham. I do believe over is what they scream as they shoot you on the launch pad. So technically, both work. My next question is: share the most important lesson that you learned the hard way this past year. And that one is for Sherry Blake.
Thank you so much. The lesson that I learned the hard way was that okay, so I went to Berlin in September to do what? You may be asking. Well, to run a marathon. So that was my first marathon that I ran abroad. And the thing that I will do when I go to London is I need to be a little more careful in terms of what I eat. When you run a marathon and when you're training and when you're approaching marathon day, you want to load up on carbs, right? So that's, what I did the night before. But I probably should have been a little more conscious of what I was putting in my body because I had spaghetti and pesto, and something just didn't sit right with that pesto. So at 1 o'clock in the morning on marathon morning, I got sick. And what I should have done is just stayed in the hotel room and not run. But no, not Sherry. I wasn't spending all that money to go all the way to Berlin and not even attempt to try to run and to also go home with a medal. So I went downstairs to have breakfast and I threw up. And that should have been a sign to go back to my room, but no, I kept moving along, got to the start village, threw up again. That should have been the sign to go back home to the hotel. But I kept moving, and then during the marathon and on the course, I probably threw up maybe 15 more times. So I think the one thing that I should make myself aware of is that when I'm going to another country, that I should be a little more cautious on what I eat, just to make sure, especially if I have something to do like a marathon, just to make sure that I can perform well. So that's one lesson that I've learned. Back to you, Table Topics Master.
I was gonna think it was the many ways you could regurgitate what you had the night before along a marathon path. But you know what? Be careful what you eat is also a very good lesson, Sherry, especially when you're gonna do something that requires, well, strenuous activity. Next question. If you could give one piece of advice to your past self at the beginning of last year, what would it be? And this goes to Jim Barber.
I'm going to ask the timer to cut me a little slack while I get things set up. And I'm sorry, Madam Topics Master, what was the question?
If you could give one piece of advice to your past self at the beginning of last year, what would it be?
Wow. I could give some advice to my past self of last year, 1 year ago. Wow, I think it would be to hang on tight, because last year was not a particularly good year. I had a number of challenges. They came out of left field, to use a baseball analogy. Wow. And if I had known that it was going to happen, there was really nothing I could do to prepare for that. All I could really do was just hang on. And I did that. I survived the year, but I think I would have done a little bit better had I known that this year was actually coming my way. And I forgot to turn on the timer, so I'm going to make it up and say that, okay, I hit the green. Okay, there I am. And now let's see, what advice would I give? Well, I think I would tell my past self that do not try to take on being timer and evaluator at the same meeting, because it's just too much to handle. So far, I was doing pretty good until you called on me to answer a table topics question. But to be timer and evaluator and answer a table topics question is definitely asking me to juggle one ball too many, and they're starting to fall down around my feet, thud, thud, thud. And so consequently, I'm going to quit because it's getting close. It must be getting close. I see Graham is actually timing me. Good for him. I'm going to go ahead and say that I'm in the red and simply call it quits at this point. Back to you, Madam Topics Master.
We had an assortment of timers
Yes.
pop up, and you're in the yellow, so that means that you did qualify.
Cool.
And at Toastmasters wears many hats, juggling a lot of roles and a lot of things tend to fall. So this was a good practical example of maybe the advice you can give yourself from last year was know your limits and when to just say, yeah, this is just too much. All right. So what is a new skill or hobby you want to try this year, and what steps will you take to start? And that one is to Andrew.
Thank you very much. What new skills or hobbies would I like to start this year? Many of you may be aware that this week, today, began something that happens every year in Las Vegas around this time, and that's known as the Consumer Electronics Show. It has 145,000 visitors to the convention center and oodles of technology to come for this coming year. There were many things that were announced at CES, including all sorts of technology for television, video, and robotics is a big thing. Lots of different robotics. You even had it on 60 Minutes yesterday, the progression of robotics. And what's happening there is that AI is empowering the robots to do more and more and more. Would not recognize the robots of today. They now have vision. They now have learning because the AI is multimodal. You have AI that's not just the question on the ChatGPT. It understands and reads pictures and sounds and integrates all those things. It can learn not just by programming, but by relying on what we think of as senses, the way we learn. And what we're seeing now is a tremendous development of all sorts of things in terms of that sphere of activity. And that brings to mind, what are we going to do? Are we going to continue to focus in the way we are in Toastmasters on what we do? Do we look at how AI can supplement and augment our learning ability, our abilities to communicate? Are we using some of the native progress that's taking place in AI? Google, in the last 3 weeks, has released 6 new programs for AI that are unbelievable. And I've utilized it into generating infographics for LinkedIn for myself. But that's another story. It's an assortment of different types of adventures that are taking place. And if you don't keep awareness of it, you're going to miss out. Back to you.
I say it to my child all the time. It makes it hard for me to describe or to explain or to raise him for the future because we have no idea what the future is actually going to look like. So there is an assortment of changes and things that are coming. Let's hope all of them are for the best. Next question is, describe the ideal version of yourself at the end of, well, next year at this time. Describe the ideal version of yourself and what choices would you have made to get there? And this one is for Kai.
Ideal version, Joni, ideal version of myself, right? By the end of this year. Oh, that's a tough question. I reflected on last year, but I forgot to reflect about what I'm going to achieve this year. But I mean, one of the things that really pop up my mind is, like I shared earlier, I hope I can get back to a full-time job by the end of this year, and I'm actually considering a career change. So I've thought through it for quite a couple of months, doing a bit of research, and spent 1 year last year doing a bit of a prototyping, because I was actually volunteer teaching at one of the low-income homes, and just to ensure that my passion and that moment of, when you are in the zone, you feel very energetic, but I don't know how long I will be in the zone. So I actually did a 1 year volunteer work so that I test it out. And I hope this year I could actually turn this, I would say, dream into fruition, and I'll be able to pursue something full-time and once again focus on my career, albeit in a different path, so that by the end of 2026, when I do this recap with all of you again, I would be in a better position wiser, learning, and also still radiant. Thank you. Johnny, back to you.
Thank you, Kai. And I know a lot of people think about the past, but don't actually take any time to contemplate the future. And it's always important not just to think about where you've come from, but also where you plan to go. Because if you're not thinking about where you want to go, how will you ever get there, right? With that, we get one more opportunity for somebody. And this is the only time I'll call for a volunteer when I've asked everybody already to answer. And I have one more question left. Well, technically two, but we'll go with one for now. Who wants to volunteer to get another chance to be best table topic speaker? Just raise your hand. Andrew, okay. If you had the opportunity to make a significant change in your life today that you weren't capable of a year ago, what would it be?
That is an excellent question. And it's harder for me to think about new things to do as I celebrated my 75th year on this planet. On the one hand, saying life expectancy is much longer now than it used to be, but still a US statistic for male age longevity is about 76. So I'm just about at that point. Do I make plans for the future? Do I anticipate making it to 100 and therefore have another 25 years of life left and therefore can plan other things? Or am I going to be realistic and say, I really only have about a year left statistically. What am I going to do with that time? And do I make longer plans? I recently received communication from Berkeley University about a special strategic planning program for 12 months for just a mere $20,000. But then what would I do with that degree? Those are the things that come up all the time. I've been delving into learning on AI and learning all of those things. It's not easy, but you have to be aware of what's coming down the pike, and you are either part of it or you're left out from it. The assortment of choices that I have are astounding, and it's a matter of how do I look at life and how do I participate, savoring every single moment, even though the Grim Reaper is on that side looking at me and saying, you are 75. You're getting closer to me than you have before. That's about it. See you all on the other side.
There's always an assortment of options when it comes to life. But you know what? It's about the choices that we actually do make that come together to form our existence. At this time of year, when most people are making resolutions, which they're probably not going to follow through on, but you know what? Some of them might, or some of them will. It's important as we reflect on the past that we also reflect on the future and where we plan to go as well. Overall, we had 365 previous days, and we can start over at any time. We can make resolutions at any time. We can reflect at any time. But considering it's cold, most of us don't want to be outside. This is a good opportunity, I guess, except for Graham, to take the time while we try to warm up, to think about when it gets warm, what we actually do want to do with the rest of our year. And with that, I return control to our Toastmaster of the day.
So much. And you bring up a very good point that we don't have to start resolutions or goals January 1st. We can pick those up anytime during the year. So if you want to start something in March, feel free. Don't think you have to wait until January 2027. So thank you so much for the assortment of questions, of table topic questions. I really appreciated those. Now we're going to move on to the evaluation portion of the meeting. And that very important part of the meeting will be led by Graham Cans. Graham, please, the virtual floor is all yours.
Thank you, Toastmaster Sherry. Thank you, everybody. And it's been an assorted range in the table topics. If you would like to vote for the best table topics participant, please follow the link which is in the chat. You can click on it. I got to use assorted there. Just that's the only reason I'm saying assorted multiple times, because there's an assortment of opportunities to do this, but I haven't taken an opportunity until now. So that's now sorted out. Sorry, bad Italian accent. All right, my job as general evaluator is to lead the evaluation portion of the Toastmasters meeting. We're all Toastmasters. I don't know if anybody is going to be watching this replay, but in case there is and they are not aware of how Toastmasters works, traditionally a Toastmasters meeting is divided into three sections. You have the formal presentations, which we saw tonight from Kai. We saw the informal presentations, which we have just seen with the table topics. And then we have the evaluation, which is, I believe, the cornerstone of the Toastmasters experience. There is no point in any of us sitting here in our computer room, standing in front of a lectern. There's no point in doing that unless we are going to get feedback from somebody. So, to provide feedback of our only formal presentation, which was given by Kai, will you please make most welcome, and Jim, I will run the timing for you at 2, 2.5, and 3. Please welcome Evaluator 1, Jim Barber.
Thank you very much, Mr. General Evaluator, my fellow Toastmasters, and of course, especially Kai. Kai, I've evaluated you before. You're always a joy to evaluate, and you didn't let me down this time. Overall, nothing but praises to sing for your presentation tonight. I do have a couple of minor suggestions to make, and another one that is more of a general philosophical thing. But before I get to those, though, let me first talk about the things that I liked. For example, I liked your gestures. Gestures are tough to do, particularly in an online environment, but you handled it well. You brought your hands up beside your head. That was good. We could see what you were motioning, and they were congruent with what you were talking about. They weren't just moving around. For example, when you described hitting a target, you actually sketched out the target. There you go, in space, so that we could see that you were talking about that. I liked that. You lowered your voice. That was very effective when you said, I was in a dark zone. You didn't just say I was in a dark zone. You said, I was in a dark zone. You lowered your voice. You slowed your pace. That was very effective. You were conversational, just in general. I like that about your presentation. Always have. You don't speak to us. You talk with us. And that's a big difference, and you do it so very, very nicely. I like the way that you counted off on your fingers. You didn't just say I had 3 values that I was working on. I had 3 values, and you counted them off. I like that very well. Enough of that. Little things that you can, couple of little things to do. And this one, this is, I'm telling you what to do, not to do, because I do the same thing. Graham has jumped on me for this, and so I'm going to jump on you as well. At one point, you said, da, 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 this and that. Don't do that. I say yada, yada, yada too. Graham jumps on me for that. You could have come up with a better word than phrasing rather than simply saying the verbal form of etc. The other thing is more of a personal preference on my account. You ended towards the end of your presentation, you said, I would like to ask you. No, you don't like to ask me. That's being a little bit subservient. I ask you. This is the important question. I ask you, not I would like to ask you. It's almost like you're asking permission. Minor, minor little thing. The third one is a little bit, as I say, more philosophical. Feel free to disagree with me on that, and other people may also. But rather than talking about the 3 values, I would like for you to have mentioned the 3 values, but then gone into depth on one of them. Rather than going into depth on all 3, I would love, for example, to have heard more about radiance. You mentioned that and you really captured me because that was an unusual value. That's not something that you would normally hear, that you would expect. And I would like to have heard you go into that in more depth with a more story, with a greater indication of how that was important to you. And so I would like to have seen that. Nothing wrong with what you did, the three values, but in a speech, you can do two things. You can deliver information or you can deliver emotion. By listing the three values, you delivered information. If you had mentioned the three values and talked about one of them, you would have delivered emotion. And that is what I would like to have heard. You did everything right. It was great. I would simply like to see that to make it a little bit better, raise it into the stratosphere of speaking. But this was another exceptional presentation. I enjoyed it, and I'm really looking forward to seeing what you're going to do in 2026. Mr. General Evaluator.
Jim, that was terrific. Thank you. And you went, by the way, 3:54. I'm sorry, I forgot to put the timing up. Never mind. We'll say you won anyway. Sorry, my fault, my fault. Mea culpa maxima.
That's fair.
I think. Is that the phrase, mea culpa maxima? Anybody Catholic? They can tell me? Never mind, doesn't really matter. All right, let's move on because I'm rabbiting and you don't need me to rabbit. Let me talk about some of the other things that are happening, other roles that I'm going to ask people to tell me about how they have done, how we have done, all that sort of stuff, because part of my job as general evaluator is to get the feedback from the other people. The functionary reports. Let's start with, for example, the watcher. Is there anything that you would like to report to us as watcher and R counter, Marianne Grady?
Okay, I'll start with the counter report, and there was really little to report here. Kai, you had a double clutch in your speech. You had a restart in your table topics, and Jim, you had a couple of restarts when you were interrupted from your evaluation. So I think we can all understand that. One thing, of course, everyone looks terrific. But I would like to mention that we are using a lot of different backgrounds that are similar, and that really doesn't set a professional look to us. I believe the way we agreed to was that we would use this background that I have behind me, and only Joni would use the one with the can't think of the word, the vision statement of the club. So I don't know if we will want to do that, but it's something that makes us look a little mishmashy. So that's all I got. Back to you, General Evaluator.
Thank you very much, Marianne. Yes, we should, as a committee, look at exactly how we're going to do this because I was thinking the same myself. We've got multiple different backgrounds here today. All right, moving on to the chat monitor. Joni, much coming up in the chat that you'd like to comment on?
Actually, we were pretty quiet in the chat, maybe because it was a small meeting. There is a picture of what's happening as it relates to AI. But overall, I believe because we were wearing multiple hats, we didn't really have the time to side talk with each other in the chat. So our chat today was pretty quiet. Back to you, Graham.
Cool. While we're there, do you have the results of the table topics, or should we allow more time for people to vote?
I do have results for our best table topic speaker. Overall, our winner for best table topics, it's a good thing he took a second chance, I guess. That was the opportunity to be our winner, Andrew Byrne.
Congratulations, Andrew. Well done. Well done. Timer. Jim, is there anything that you need to tell us that hasn't already gone into the chat?
Nope, I don't think so.
Nope, other than the fact that you ran over, but that was my fault, not your fault. So that's fine. Who else do we have as an ancillary role? We have the grammarian. The reason I left the grammarian to last was to allow everybody the opportunity to use the word of the day in their reports. I note that none of them did. That's an assortment of errors there. Sorry. Andrew, grammarian's report from you, if you would be, please.
A lot of people did use assortment, which is the word of the day, including myself, Joni, yourself. Several other people did it as well. There wasn't any obvious grammatical errors, tense errors, things of that nature. I think everybody did a good job focusing in on their speeches and when they could to include the word of the day assortment.
Fabulous. And any outstanding uses of language that you happen to note?
None that came and really said, grab me. A number of individuals had appropriate literary activities and drew attention. Your speaking, Jim's speaking is always in that top tier of speaking. Kai did a great job with his speech, but it wasn't Maya Angelou speaking to me today. So
Fabulous. Thank you very much for that, Andrew. All right, let's move to my role as general evaluator. And I'm going to segue from the grammarian's role to something that Jim said. And I love segue. Segue, by the way, is one of those words that has a very specific meaning. And most of us think of segways as being like those two-wheeled vehicles where you stand and weird. I've never tried riding one. They just look really scary to me. But segue, S-E-G-U-E, pronounced segue, means to meld from one thing to another. In radio, we call them crossfades, but a segue is actually more than that, because a segue not only takes you from one thing to another, but it integrates the two. Herein is the grammarian's point. Jim said something in his evaluation that I wanted to draw everybody's attention to. And Jim, you were speaking about, I would like to. What was the exact phrase that you were saying that you pointed out that Kai used?
Let's see. I would like to ask you.
All right. I would like to means I'm not confident in this. I think maybe that it would be a good idea whereas if you drop that verbiage, if you drop those weasel words, as we call them in journalism, you become a much stronger presenter because you are expressing your point of view. Now, I'm not being critical of Kai here. I'm merely using this, as I say, as an object lesson, which brings me to the evaluation by Jim. Jim is one of the club's more experienced evaluators, and I always appreciate listening to Jim because I always learn something from Jim. Jim, for example, gave really good, strong, positive, and specific advice to Kai tonight. One of the things I love to see in an evaluation is an evaluation that gives specific points for improvement. To say, you have done really well to get to this point. Here is something that will make your next presentation even better. Because the purpose of an evaluation to me, I genuinely believe, is to uplift the speaker, but to give them a point that they can go forward from here. So well done, Jim. I love the fact that Jim spoke about we can deliver information or we can deliver emotion. And you can deliver both, but you've got to be really careful about how it's done. And I loved that connection being drawn tonight. One suggestion that I would make, not just for Jim, but for everybody. And in a group like this, where we are all effectively peers, it does not really matter. But when you are providing feedback, public feedback to somebody, Jim said, you did, I like the way that you did, you. And that's great for Kai, but it leaves the rest of us feeling, yeah, that's okay. That's good advice for Kai. What advice can I take from this? As an evaluator, it is a teaching role. We are evaluating the presenter, but we are also providing information not just for the presenter, but for everybody. My general advice is if there is specific advice that you want to give to the specific speaker, that's the point that you say, Jim, one of the things that you might like to do is bear in mind such and such. But in general terms, one of the things that we as evaluators should be doing is so and so. That's just one of those things that I like to draw to the attention, particularly to experienced Toastmasters, because it is very easy for us to provide an evaluation just for the recipient instead of as an overhead. Having said that, with a great evaluation, I give no problems there, as I say, and particularly the positivity and the specific advice which Jim gave, I think, will what make me always appreciate your presentations, Jim. So thank you for that. Let me give some feedback on the meeting itself. Small but mighty might be a good way of describing this meeting. Yes, Jim was the best evaluator. He says so. And so, yeah, give him the award. Yeah, Jim. Also, Kai, the best speaker. Yeah, Kai. It is a pity that we only have a handful of people here today. That's almost inevitable. And I know that there are a lot of face-to-face clubs. I know of one face-to-face club which met once in December and will not meet again until February because they just believe that people won't turn up to meetings. Now, I personally think that's too long a break. I'm not sure whether we might have been better served to have another break this week as we did last week. But having said that, despite the fact that there are only the 7 of us here, I think this has actually been a really good meeting. We had a fine and fascinating speech from Kai. We had a good, strong evaluation from Jim. We had some really thought-provoking and deeply engaging table topics presented by Joni and then delivered by each and every one here. I really appreciated everything that happened at this meeting. I thought that we showed what this club can do when we are able to pull ourselves up by the bootstraps. There is an argument that, you can't just grab hold of a sky hook. There has to be something to hang on to. We have the something to hang on to, and that is the experience that we all have. But we showed today how we can utilize that even when things don't go quite as well as they might have. And I might tell you that next week's agenda is already looking much stronger than this week's agenda, and there will be more to say about that when we get to next week's agenda. But as general evaluator, I want to thank you all for coming along here. I want to thank each and every one for your contributions. And I'd like to think that this may not have been the biggest meeting that we're going to have all year. I seriously hope it's not the smallest meeting I seriously hope that it is the smallest meeting we're going to have all year. But thank you for coming along. And as general evaluator, I now hand control of the meeting back to, do you want it Toastmaster Sherry, or shall I hand it straight to, oh, did I not get something from you? Yes, Andy, before I go.
I just wanted to point out what I put in the chat box, and that is that many people are not used to the fact that in Pathways version 2.0, where the different functionary roles need to be recorded to get from levels 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And so if you go to the base camp and go to the top right-hand side under profile, you will see that you have to log in, that you gave a speech, that you were the evaluator, that you did timing, any of those roles, because those are the things that they're going to look at when they give you credit for going from any particular level to the next level. And we're not used to that. Most of us are not used to it. At least as I go around in the different clubs, many people are not used to it. I'm used to it already. But those are the things that we need to be thinking about, because you'll find that when you submit for your level completions, you won't get those level completions because they're looking for those additional things that they've added since October. And if you're not aware of it and don't pay attention to that, then you won't get credit, and it will hurt you, hurt your club.
We may, in fact, do a short tip on that in a forthcoming meeting, showing members exactly how to do that. Not so much showing our members, although that's important, but showing members of other clubs how to do that, because that's the sort of thing that we should be doing as online presenters. Now, I'll hand control back to the Toastmaster of the day, Sherry Blake.
Thank you so much. Well, again, this was a great meeting, as I think Graham mentioned, and yeah, as Graham mentioned, it was a small attendance, and I do hope that this is the smallest group we have in the future. And I'm just glad to be here. I'm glad to start this new year off right. I'm going to turn the meeting back over to our president, Tony Laidlaw. Back to
Thank you, Sherry, for taking on this role. And I hope we don't have to wait another year to see you as Toastmaster of the day again. You did an excellent job taking us through the meeting. And I look forward to hearing your marathon of speeches. See what I did there? Preferably on your marathon. You know, I live vicariously. If I'm running, believe me, past me, somebody's chasing me. So it's always good to have motivated people speak about their experiences. I get to live vicariously through you. So I look forward to hearing more from you during the course of the rest of this year. Overall, we had an excellent meeting. I didn't want to take another break this week because you know what? We enjoy coming together to put the meetings together. And even Toastmaster says sometimes a Toastmaster wears many hats. The important thing is we came and we got it done. However, and this is to those on the recording, I hope to see everyone here next week taking a role so everybody only has one role. And I'm hoping that we have so many speeches because we've had how many weeks to be called and think about it and contemplate and have a lot to share, that we'll have a speechathon for our next meeting. So I look forward to seeing you here. With that, I adjourn our meeting. All right. I would say, Graham, you can go ahead and do the check the rules, but I mean, really.
Yeah.